pinned down by the soul-suppressing bead for 13 years. My soul was so bored it was about to dissipate. But then, I ran into the true young mistress who had been kicked out of the Marquis's manor. She lay on my grave, her tears falling like rain.
I want to die, and I want to live. Let's trade.
I never expected that when I was reduced to just a wisp of a ghost, someone would still be able to see me. 6 months ago, when the Marquis's manor fetched her back, they passed by my tiny plot of land. The carriage stopped under the large peach tree on my grave. The impatient old maidservant clutched her backside, rushed into the bushes to relieve herself. One person was left behind in the carriage. It was Manhwa, the true young mistress who had been found and brought back by the Marquis's manor. When that palm-sized little face met my eyes, she instantly turned pale with fright. I bared my fangs and blew a cold breath right into her face.
Let me smell your dry rations, and I shall spare your life.
She fumbled around trembling for a long time before holding out 2 cold buns.
Are you treating me like a beggar? I want to smell the good stuff. Like that.
I extended my long tongue and pointed toward the servant boy nearby and the meat in the coachman's hand. She followed my gaze to take a look, and then her face filled with embarrassment.
I haven't officially returned to the family yet. The youngie Marquis's manor doesn't feed idle people. I brought these dry rations myself.
My 3-foot-long tongue froze, and then I slowly pulled it back. The Marquis's manor had vast wealth and estate. Even the buns they threw out to feed the dogs were finer than the ones in her hand. More than 10 years ago, I had seen that adopted daughter at a palace banquet, draped in gold and jade. She was hardly any less grand than the imperial princesses. Back then, the Marchioness, whenever she mentioned her lost daughter, would shed tears in front of everyone. Yet, in just over 10 years, she had actually forgotten her biological daughter, neglecting her to such a miserable state. I was merely lying on the treetop, sighing a little at the coldness of the world. But Manhwa's heart softened. She summoned her courage to ask the coachman for a piece of meat.
Here, please don't cry.
I froze, only to realize that blood was dripping from my eyes. Suddenly, the old maidservant's ruler struck her hand.
A young mistress must have the manners of a young mistress. What kind of noble family is the Marquis's manor? How can you eat food that is begged for? A single piece of dried meat has made you lose all the dignity of the Marquis's manor. Lowly and shameless, you deserve to be punished.
With behavior like this, you can't even compare to the green bamboo in the young mistress's courtyard. If not for the marriage alliance, who do you think would be willing to fetch her back?
Haha. The Marquise and Madame already went to see her 5 years ago. They disliked that she was illiterate and unfit for polite society, so they didn't want her.
Manhwa clenched her sleeves, too ashamed to even lift her head. Yet the 3 of them grew even more arrogant, spewing a stream of malicious words, all filled with belittlement and mockery. So noisy, I was getting a bit irritated, and I started to recall the days when I used to kill people.
Have you ever seen a human swing?
Manhwa froze.
Today, you're going to see one.
I extended my long tongue, and the old maidservant was swept up into the peach tree by me. A pincer-like branch caught her by the neck. With a single breath from me, she began to swing back and forth wildly.
Should we go a bit faster?
Manhwa was stunned. The coachman and the servant boy shouted as they rushed over to help. I let out a sinister laugh.
Do you want to see a fire wheel?
The coachman and the servant boy were spun frantically on the branches as if their lives depended on it. They screamed hysterically, while the young girl went from being scared to laughing. An hour later, the 3 unconscious people were lying neatly on the ground. Manhwa and I held the jerky, feasting on it.
What is your name? I will save up money when I return to the capital to help release your soul.
My name is not something she can touch. Besides, my soul cannot be released anyway. I have been struck by the soul-suppressing bead. Don't waste your energy. Furthermore,
I didn't say it out loud. Furthermore, my soul is about to scatter and perish.
Just tell them they were pinched by a ghost. Looking like this, they themselves would only dare to say they were terrified of seeing a ghost in broad daylight. Live well. After all, what I want most is to live and send those wretched people to hell.
She was stunned for a moment, then said with absolute certainty,
You like the smell of meat. Next time I come to see you, I will bring you roast chicken.
But once she left, she was gone for half a year. When I saw her again, it was on a rainy day filled with thunder and lightning. Peals of thunder rumbled, illuminating Manhwa's deathly pale face. Unlike her vibrant self from half a year ago, her breath was now as weak as a thread.
I know about the soul-suppressing talisman. If you want freedom, it can only be a life for a life. I specially went to the Huguo temple to request this talisman. As long as you nod, I will give my life to you. I didn't forget you. I just couldn't get out. There is no roast chicken. Please don't blame me.
Who drove you to this state? The Meng family,
The ways of the world, and my own ignorance and cowardice, making me inferior to others. This is my fate.
In the next instant, a sharp dagger slashed across her wrist in a flash. Fresh blood gushed out, staining the damp talisman she had hidden in her bosom. A golden light appeared.
Come and hug me. You are the only one who has ever protected me. I want to die, and you want to live. Let's trade. I beg of you.
What is your wish? I will help you. I will help you with everything.
You must live well. I will be reborn into a good family in my next life. We both win. We both win.
Did we win? Unless everyone is dragged down to die together. Otherwise, it is a death in vain.
That night, a real young mistress whom nobody cared about died in the Marquis's manor, but a fierce ghost was resurrected in the mass grave. The peach tree withered overnight. I went down the mountain, assuming Mungloxi's identity. I know nothing of the next life, but in this life, her grudges and my grudges must be paid back in blood. I rushed back to the Marquis's manor on the day of the young mistress's coming-of-age ceremony. Amidst the joy filling the hall, rare and precious jewelry for the young mistress was piled before her as if it cost nothing, surrounded by flowers and splendor. It was indeed the peak of her life. Only, no one remembered that today was also Mungloxi's birthday.
This is from your grandmother's dowry. Mother won't give it to anyone else, only to my Ninger.
I knew mother loves me the most. Ninger loves mother so much.
Mother's family heirloom. Even brother doesn't have it.
Pointing at the imperially bestowed 5-color agate.
But this is what brother begged from the third prince for you. The meaning is naturally very different.
Father's gift is not bad either. I have petitioned the emperor. After your coming-of-age ceremony, he will arrange an early marriage for you and the third prince, so that the pearl in my palm may have her wish fulfilled.
Father, you are embarrassing me to speak of such things in public. Your daughter is going to ignore you.
Everyone was amused and burst into laughter. Their words were dripping with honeyed sweetness. Yet inside my body, I still carried the painful, lingering wounds of Mungloxi. As the cold wind blew, the chill seeped into my bones, making me shiver involuntarily. Amidst the roaring laughter, I walked in, completely spoiling the festive mood.
Then what about me? What are you going to give me?
So you finally decided to come back. I thought you had more backbone than that. To think you couldn't make it out there and had to crawl back in shame. Do you have any idea how worried Signing was because you ran away from home? She was so frightened that she couldn't eat or sleep for days. Daring to elope with someone, you truly have no shame. The Marquis's manor has lost all its dignity because of you.
Brother, please don't say that. I no longer blame sister, even though she drove me out of the manor and almost cost me my life. I have enjoyed the wealth and privilege of the Marquis's manor for so many years after all. I am content. I'm sure she was just instigated by someone else to elope. Now sister must know she was wrong. Since sister is back, I think it is time I returned everything that belongs to her. But sister, you left without saying goodbye for all this time, causing father and mother so much worry. You must not forget to apologize to our parents.
I certainly cannot accept her apology. The last time she apologized to you, she pushed you into the water. If she apologizes to me, who knows if my old bones will end up in the grave too. Besides, as your mother, I have only one daughter, and that is you, Signing. Do not insult me by bringing up anyone else.
Sister, quickly admit your mistake.
Seeing that I remained completely unmoved, the Marquis roared sternly.
Kneel down this instant.
I did not budge an inch, yet my body instinctively felt a wave of sadness and heartache. That was Mungloxi. Even though her soul was gone, her body was still grieving.
What she has. Shouldn't I have it too?
A country bumpkin with no manners, humiliating the Marquis's manor time and time again. If Signing hadn't protected you, you would have died 10,000 times over.
Eloping with someone who told you that. Sister, don't be afraid. Since you are back, your family will naturally clean up your mess. I have already destroyed that letter for you. As long as you admit your mistake to father and mother, you will still be the eldest young mistress of the Marquis's manor. Our family will still live in harmony.
Mung Signing affectionately grabbed my arm, digging her sharp fingernails deep into my skin.
Isn't that right, sister?
She was prepared to let me fling her away in pain, so she could fall to the ground on purpose, but I didn't move at all. She froze in place.
You've actually improved. You really are something. Why didn't you just die out there?
To think such a low-class trick was what drove Mungloxi to her death. I couldn't help but let out a cold laugh.
So, the rumor about me eloping with someone came from your mouth. Sister, are you blaming me, sister? I didn't mean to.
With a loud crack, I casually dislocated her jaw.
It is good that you admit it. No need to say anything else.
The movement was so fast. By the time she clutched her jaw, screaming in pain, the crowd finally reacted. Instantly, everyone rushed forward to seize me. But before the wet nurse, who was charging ahead for her, could even get close, I broke her thigh bone with a single kick. She could only lie on the ground, wailing in pain. At the exact same time, the dagger in my hand flashed as my wrist flicked.
It hurts so much, mother. Signing is in so much pain. Signing is disfigured.
He didn't dare to make another sound. The arrogance and condescension he showed just now had now turned into a face full of shrinking fear and dread. I stepped my foot directly onto Mung Sining's wet nurse, who was rolling all over the ground.
Tell me, who kicked your master out of the manor? And how did she end up falling into the water? Eldest miss, even if you kill this old servant, I can only tell the truth. It was you who couldn't tolerate the second miss, and failing to kill her, you kicked her out of the manor. The second miss was almost abducted by bandits, and her leg is still injured now.
Quite a stubborn one. Interesting.
You rebellious girl. Are you trying to turn the world upside down? If you want a gift, I will just give it to you. But since you dared to hurt my Ninger, I will never acknowledge you as my daughter in this lifetime.
She is really noisy. I ripped off one of Mung Sining's earrings and flicked it right into Madame Mung's hair crown.
Next time, I will hit you right in the eye. Having eyes but failing to see, there is no point in keeping them.
Terrified, Madame Mung collapsed onto the ground. I turned my head to look at the stubborn Nanny Wu.
I gave you a chance, but you didn't cherish it, so you can't blame me. Still not telling the truth?
She didn't dare to answer, only screaming for her life. At this moment, Meng Yinting questioned loudly.
What do you want? We will just give it to you. Is it Sining's courtyard, or to be officially recognized by the family, or the marriage with the third prince? Put down the knife, and we can discuss this slowly. Don't cause any deaths. Otherwise, even your elder brother won't be able to help you.
His endless babbling interrupted my interrogation, and a sudden surge of anger rushed to my head.
Come over here, and I'll tell you what I want.
He hesitated, repeatedly, but eventually came over. Before he could even draw the blade behind his back, I slapped him hard a dozen times. He didn't pass out until I slammed him heavily onto the ground. He finally passed out.
That is for talking too much, you worthless fool.
I rubbed my ringing ears. I turned around and stabbed her again. Turned around and stabbed again, plunging the blade straight into the wet nurse's chest. Sure enough, after just 2 stabs, Nanny Wu was in so much pain that she was ready to confess everything, like spilling beans. She poured out all the grievances and persecution Meng Luoxi had suffered. On her very first day back, because she made the precious daughter cry, she was locked in the smallest courtyard to learn etiquette. Later, she was framed for pushing the fake young lady into the lake.
It was all ordered by the second miss. She couldn't stand being overshadowed by the eldest miss just because of blood relations, so she wanted the eldest miss gone. From beginning to end, it was all the second miss's scheme. When the eldest miss was locked in the ancestral hall, the second miss took over the task of delivering meals, but she never delivered a single meal. For an entire month, the eldest miss survived on the leftovers of the servants. The master's cold medicine was also brewed by the eldest miss while she watched over the stove, but she was stopped when entering the study, and the third miss added laxatives to it, framing the eldest miss for it.
Being grounded, kneeling in the ancestral hall, being beaten, and even being kicked out of the house to fend for herself, Meng Luoxi had actually suffered so much injustice in her own home.
What about the elopement?
The eldest miss did not elope with anyone. The master and madam kicked the eldest miss out of the Marquis's manor because the second miss ran away from home, wanting her to realize how difficult life is for a woman without the protection of her family. But the second miss had already bribed brutal bandits to murder the eldest miss in the suburbs of the capital. As for that letter, it was naturally written by Kueji. She is skilled at forgery.
It was the second miss who forced me. We are just servants. How could we dare to disobey? Please spare my life, eldest miss.
Take Meng Sining down and torture her severely.
Who dares?
The servant I had intentionally let go had brought back a furious third prince, Shen Jinzhou. How should I put it? He was far less intelligent than Shen Xuanyi and hadn't even inherited his looks. He had only 3/10 of his mother's appearance. He was somewhat cute as a child, but now he looked utterly detestable from head to toe. Holding the seemingly fragile Meng Sining in his arms and surrounded by his guards, he barked at me incessantly.
You severely injured a court official and my fiancé, Meng Luoxi. I think you've lost your mind and are looking for death. Men, arrest this heinous woman and send her to the court of state ceremonies for severe punishment.
Oh, arresting their daughter in the Marquis's residence. Have you asked if they agree?
Even though they now knew the whole truth, everyone in the Meng family, when facing the third prince's attack on their poor daughter, still chose to remain silent. After all, the wealth and future of the Marquis's estate were more important. Oh, Meng Loaxi, they are not worth it. The opportunity was given, and now they must bear the consequences themselves. The third prince sneered, his arrogant demeanor looking exactly like that man's.
Who would dare to say yes? Do you think that by hurting signing, you can marry me? Keep dreaming. Now that the Meng family doesn't want you, I will make your life worse than death to atone for what you did to signing. If you know what is good for you, take your own life in front of signing, and I might leave you with an intact corpse.
To play the hero protecting his lady, the third prince, despite knowing the truth, was willing to bend the law just to put me to death.
How could signing have plotted against you? It has always been you, running amok and killing people in the Marquis's residence. Signing was only trying to stop your madness. When you disfigured her face, Lord Meng tried to persuade you to do good, only for you to knock his teeth out. Humph, that is the only truth.
Hearing him say this, I let out a mocking sneer. He grew somewhat irritated.
Guards, take her to the court of judicial review. Order them to interrogate her severely.
I am afraid this subject. I am afraid I am powerless to do so.
The minister of the court of state ceremonies walked out from the shadows. Fortunately, he was on my side.
My apologies. Investigating by imperial decree, everyone present who distorted the truth to put me to death. Throw them all into the dungeon.
In fact, I had planned all of this long ago. Before returning to the capital, I paid a visit to the Temple of National Protection. There resided the Empress Dowager, who ate vegetarian food for life to pray for her son. She used to dislike me, and her punishment of making me kneel caused me to lose my 8-month-old child. But now, after I told her the truth that her son was killed by the Emperor, she was eager to reach a revenge agreement with me. Under the Empress Dowager's arrangement, the Emperor, who went to the Temple of National Protection to visit her, fell in love with me at first sight. I was bestowed the title of Consort Ru. How ridiculous I became a substitute for myself. After all, no one would ever suspect that the current Meng Loaxi is actually Xuanyi's long-dead white moonlight, Yun Yin. Imitating myself, I could be as similar as I wanted to be. So, when Xuanyi was knocked off his horse by my sword, and I stepped on his shoulder blade, about to snap his neck, he, through my blade, and my expression, found the shadow of his old acquaintance. He wanted to make the defiant me his consort Ru. The condition I proposed was for him to kill the fake daughter for me, to avenge my grievances. He only assigned the Minister of Justice and Eunuch Wu, the chief palace steward, to me. Whether I can bring the wicked to justice depends entirely on my own methods. In extraordinary times, strong measures are necessary. This was actually suggested by Xuanyi himself when he was 18, so I chose bloody torture to extract confessions. Yet, the third prince just had to jump out, acting out of anger for his beloved, trying to make me a scapegoat. Xuanyi wants to protect his son, but I insist on venting my anger. We are at a standstill.
You are quite something, using my sword to threaten my son. Just to vent your anger. You actually dragged my son into this.
Today's Xuanyi is much more tempered. He is a far cry from the sharp, profound, and ruthless man he used to be. In the past, he could not tolerate any flaws. Now, for the stability of the court and the harem, he constantly tries to smooth things over. I lean back on the lounger, squinting in the sun, not giving him a single glance. As we remain at a standstill, he reaches out and gently brushes my face.
This temperament of yours is becoming more and more like hers. The third prince almost died of illness when he was young. The Empress doted on him too much, spoiling him so that he knows no bounds. He has disappointed me greatly.
A simple disappointed, and that is it.
Xuanyi looks displeased. Yet, I look up to meet his gaze without backing down at all. My eyes filled with playful yet aggressive defiance. He had told Yun Yin himself that this was his favorite look of hers. Taken aback by this expression, he recoils slightly, just as he is about to speak.
Her Majesty the Empress has arrived.
Zhu Ying, long time no see. I went to great lengths to drag the third prince down, just to present you with this welcoming gift.
She is just as she was before, maintaining the virtuous and dignified poise of a noble lady. Only when she sees me and my sword does the corner of her eye twitch slightly.
The third prince is young. He was easily instigated and framed by malicious people, which was why he lost his temper for a moment and committed such a foolish act. I have failed in my duties as the empress by raising such a foolish son. I request to enter the cold palace to receive my punishment.
Your Majesty is in poor health. She was barely barely able to get out of bed. Yet she brought the third prince to beg for forgiveness. Please forgive her, Your Majesty. The Empress must not enter the cold palace. If the Empress is implicated, it will inevitably spark disputes in the imperial court again.
And what Xuanyi detests the most are those old fools in the imperial court. Zhu Ying is still the same as she was in her youth, always preferring to achieve her goals through manipulation, but she is wishing for the impossible. I glance at Xuanyi.
Why don't you find a spokesperson for me too, so others can say all the unpleasant things in the future, and I will only say what you like to hear. Alright.
With the Empress's good cop bad cop act exposed, her dignified smile freezes on her face. The talkative Nanny Li is immediately dragged away by Eunuch Wu. As the sound of face-slapping echoes, Zhu Ying's face turns icy cold. Her hateful gaze sweeps across my face, but I carelessly nudge Xuanyi's leg with my foot.
Is it me, or that damned fake daughter? If you can't bear to punish your son, then punish the fake daughter instead. Settling for the second best option is good for everyone.
Xuanyi understands my compromise. His gloomy face instantly softened like melting spring snow.
You are my beloved consort. If even you were to be wronged, would that not make me a foolish ruler?
His expression turns cold as he looks at the Empress.
The daughter of the Meng family is vicious and cruel. She manipulated my son, and even tried to harm my beloved consort. This is absolutely unpardonable. I shall punish her.
Shen Jinzhou, who was kneeling outside the courtyard carrying thorny branches as a sign of penance, broke into my inner palace the moment he heard Meng's signing was to be punished, showing absolutely no regard for protocol, utterly undisciplined, and incredibly foolish, but this played right into my hands.
How insolent! If I do not punish her severely, there is no telling how much further you will be led astray by that wicked woman.
She is an impostor who took another's place, a scourge who deceived the emperor, and she nearly cost consort Ru her life. Bestowing a cup of poison upon her can be considered granting her a dignified end.
The emperor had left a way out for his own son by pushing Meng's signing forward to take the fall. The Empress, naturally, was more than happy to see this outcome. She went along with the plan, using Meng Sining's life to protect her own son.
Imperial Mother, my feelings for Sining are entirely genuine. She is pure and kind-hearted, definitely not someone who would do evil. She was merely framed by others. Now that her face is ruined, she is already so pitiable. As the Empress of the Central Palace, you must seek justice for such a vulnerable and pitiful woman.
Xuanyi closed his eyes tightly in deep frustration. While Zhu Ying was so enraged, she looked as if she might faint on the spot.
If the third prince does not believe it, why not let him personally witness the proceedings at the Court of Judicial Review? Then he will know the truth. After all, even in death, the Meng family daughter should die with clear answers. It would be better to conduct a thorough interrogation.
Zhu Ying panicked. The interrogations at the Court of Judicial Review were notoriously bloody affairs. If Meng Sining were sent there, she would suffer a fate worse than death. Yes, even if she had to die, I would not let her off easily. Rolling on a bed of nails, branding with hot irons. The various torture chambers extended 5 levels deep underground. I wondered which level Meng Sining would manage to survive down to. The grievances suffered by Meng Luoxi must be repaid, level by level, through those descending tortures. A debt of blood must be paid in blood. Zhu Ying could not bear to let the child she had protected and raised. To witness such a scene, she dropped her mask of dignified composure and pleaded bitterly.
If you continue to shield him, with how useless he has become, he will only be fit to be banished to the fiefdom to clear wasteland. Instead of wasting time kneeling and begging me, you would do better to properly discipline your worthless son.
Zhu Ying was, after all, his first wife, and had always been treated with great respect by Xuanyi. To be reprimanded with such harsh words for the first time, she lost all her dignity. How could she dare to provoke his anger any further? The third prince was still sent to the Court of Judicial Review by the emperor.
I have vented this anger on your behalf. Are you satisfied now?
Xuanyi glared at me with a cold face, his brow furrowed in deep displeasure. I leaned in close, pushing him down onto the low table, just like the 15-year-old Yunyan used to do.
Although I am not entirely satisfied, since you protected me, I shall make sure you are satisfied as well.
I played Yunyan's little tricks to perfection, making them 50% similar, but never fully satisfying. Every time Xuanyi felt pleased, he was always left wanting just a little bit more. It was as if he had gotten his wish, yet that missing piece left him clawing at his heart in frustration, making him yearn for me, and for Yunyan even more. Within just 3 days, the third prince developed a high fever. 3 waves of imperial physicians were summoned. The physicians said he had suffered extreme fright, which damaged his mind. No one knew that the blade used to slash Meng Sining that night had been poisoned. The third prince happened to be contaminated with it when he held her. Under extreme fright, an unstable mind would trigger hallucinations. Terrified to the point of madness by the blood-drenched image of Meng signing, the third prince uttered a single command.
Guards, have her bones crushed and her ashes scattered. Throw them into the river to end this once and for all.
While he spent his days consumed by paranoia, I did not forget about his imperial mother either. In one fell swoop, I eliminated several of Zhu Ying's spies. When the list of the deceased was delivered to Zhu Ying, I heard her face turned green with rage. Her unhappiness was precisely my source of joy. That very night, I ordered someone to send the blood-stained clothes Meng signing wore during her torture to the Marquis's manor. Since the Marquis and his wife missed their daughter so dearly, I, the Empress, would grant them something to remember her by. The Marquis's wife vomited blood from extreme grief and anger. The Marquis's manor, now a public laughingstock, fell into utter chaos. I sat cross-legged, cracking melon seeds, while Xuanyi sighed repeatedly beside me.
Our son is actually this useless. It is truly more shameful than our own death.
I gave a subtle look to my servant, and these words were soon spread throughout the entire palace, especially to the Weiyang Palace. Zhu Ying lost her temper terribly once again, hiding inside Weiyang Palace. A low-ranking consort who came to pay her respects was punished by kneeling on a fabricated pretext simply because she wore a red rose. The Empress, who always appeared virtuous and magnanimous in public, was about to show her true colors. But that was merely an introductory gift. The real show was yet to come. Xuanyi desperately searched for traces of Yun Yin in me. Infatuated with the fearlessness I possess, he practically lived in my Guanju palace. His favor, his partiality, and his devotion were all given to me. During our intimate moments, he would call out Yun Yin's name. I grabbed his jaw, forcing him to look clearly at my face.
Your concubine is consort Ru, the orphaned girl Aru.
He pressed his forehead against mine and let out a self-deprecating laugh.
Indeed, she was never as obedient as you. When Zhu Ying dared to send people to beat her, she actually dared to slap Zhu Ying in our presence.
The time she slapped Zhu Ying was when Zhu Ying pointed at my bulging belly and tore into me with a smiling face like a beast.
So what if you are pregnant? Whether you can give birth to it, and what kind of life it will live if it is born, who knows?
But the consequence of slapping her was that I was forced to kneel for half a day by the Empress Dowager, which caused my miscarriage. Only much later did I learn that when she flaunted herself in front of me that day, she carried abortifacient medicine on her person. From the very beginning, her goal was to make me miscarry. Since my son died because of her schemes, her son shall not live in peace either. I touched Xuanyi's sharp brow and eyes, but I can no longer find any trace of his former self.
Then where is she? Where did she go?
Xuanyi's body stiffened. He turned away and said indifferently,
"The night is late. Go to sleep."
I could not sleep. I missed my younger brother. When Xuanyi took my secret letter and rode 100 miles to rescue the emperor, I was surrounded in the prince's manor by troops led by Zhu Ying's older brother. Her brother held my hidden younger brother before him, forcing me to surrender.
Rebel. Or his life. Choose one.
The Yun family was falsely accused, and the entire household was wiped out. Only my brother and I remained. We shed blood and risked our lives for Xuanyi. Firstly, to clear the Yun family's name one day, and secondly, so my brother could live a good life. He was only 7 years old. Even when he became a prisoner under the blade of Zhu Ying's brother, he told me without any fear,
"Sister, you have done enough for me and for the Yun family. If you do not leave, I will not live on alone either."
Zhu Ying's brother stomped on my brother's back, and the sound of breaking bones nearly tore me apart.
If she leaves, I will strip you naked and hang you from the city gates for all to see.
Seeing that I still had not dropped the blade in my hand, he brutally twisted my brother's arms behind his back until they broke. The 7-year-old child was pale with agonizing pain, yet he still forced a smile at me.
"I am a man. I can bear it."
My brother's leg, which he used for martial arts, was snapped with a heavy stomp. Just as the tip of Zhu Ying's brother's blade was about to pierce my little brother's eye, I threw down the blade in my hand, but a sharp sword pierced through my chest. It was actually the sister I had protected all along. That person is still in the imperial palace today, silently enjoying her wealth and honor. It is time for her to pay me back with her life. In my 2nd month in the palace held an autumn feast. Xuanyi held my hand and had me sit by his side. Zhu Ying forced herself to maintain her pride, but she was already gnashing her teeth in hatred. While Xuanyi was drinking with the ministers, I quietly swapped my wine for water, and then touched my lower abdomen provocatively.
I am with child.
The hand with which Zhu Ying gripped her wine cup turned white. After 3 rounds of wine, I took the initiative to suggest going for a walk.
Protect yourself.
I patted the blade on my body.
With this, You can rest assured.
The gates of Xianfu Palace, which had not been opened for a long time, were open. Concubine Jen, who lived a secluded life, was already waiting for me under the moonlight. When she saw me, she rushed forward in a hurry.
Are they still alive? What on earth do you want? Kneel.
Her face froze, meeting my cold gaze. She weakly knelt down.
Greetings, your ladyship.
I did not tell her to rise, but sat before her, looking down at her.
This Xianfu Palaces is not nearly as magnificent as your former courtyard. What? Is Zhu Ying not treating you well? I am merely a chess piece, without offspring to rely on. This is already the best possible outcome. What exactly do you want me to do? I only want to know if my family is still alive.
I did not answer a single word, but only threw down a packet of poison.
Visit the Empress's palace more often lately. You are good sisters after all. Her precious son is so ill he couldn't even get out of bed for the palace feast. How can she do without a few words of comfort from you?
Her gaze lingered on the packet of poison for a long time, but in the end, she tremblingly snatched the poison into her hand.
If I do this, can you release my mother and little brother?
I stood up expressionlessly and left.
You have no right to ask.
With her weakness held in another's hands. What right did she have to bargain? Back then, she was the only one who had read my little brother's letter. She was also the only one who betrayed us. Song Jenner, a life for a life. From the moment I delivered her mother's and brother's tokens into her hands, she was destined to find no peace before her death, living in constant dread day after day. On my way back to the palace feast, I was blocked by Consort Chen. She looked at my face with a beaming smile.
You look so much like an old acquaintance.
I rolled my eyes.
Oh, I know. His Majesty told me the day he begged me to be his consort. I am merely a substitute for his white moonlight. But isn't a consort also noble and precious? With no worries about food and clothing. What do I have to be pretentious about?
Her face froze, and she swallowed her divisive words back down.
Right now is a great opportunity for the second prince to show his face. Shouldn't you take advantage of the situation? The emperor is currently having a headache because none of his sons can stand on their own. Such a good opportunity, if missed, may never come again. Compared to the empress's hypocrisy, I find your smile much more cordial.
Consort Chen's eyes lit up, and she gently took my hand. The third prince fell ill, and the second prince made a high-spirited appearance in court. I used to like Consort Chen very much. She was delicate and weak, always with a faint smile, following behind me, calling me sister, sister, all the time. She was meticulous, gentle, and obedient. Whenever I returned to the estate covered in blood, she would always stand under the corridor, waiting to clean my wounds and apply medicine. The two people I trusted most in the prince's estate were Wan Chong, whom I trained myself, and Song Jenner, whom I rescued from a pile of corpses. But in the end, Song Jenner traded my weakness for wealth and status, becoming the current concubine Jen, and Wan Xiong stabbed me in the back, later being titled Consort Chen for her merit. As for them, not a single one will escape. Now that the third prince has fallen into decline, Consort Chen, who has endured silently for years, finally showed her sharp edge, using the information I gave her. In court, the second prince continuously won people over, pressing the third prince down so hard he couldn't move. In the harem, Consort Chen openly associated with me, catching the empress completely off guard.
Thank you for the evidence, sister. Now Minister Zhu is deeply mired in the corruption case of forming cliques for private gain, making it difficult for him to extricate himself. Even if he wants to be the third prince's backer, he no longer has the power to do so. It is just a pity that he is so tight-lipped after all, failing to implicate the third prince.
I glanced at her sideways.
Whether there is solid proof doesn't matter. The second prince understands that public rumors are a powerful force. At worst, we just create momentum.
Remembering that today was the day the little girl ate her dried meat, I stood up and walked toward the prayer hall. The smile on Consort Chen's face vanished instantly, her eyes turning cold and dark.
Trying to kill someone with a borrowed knife. It is not yet certain who is whose knife.
The news of my pregnancy was kept strictly under wraps. Xuan Yi protected me tightly with layers of guards, promising that he would ensure the safety of both mother and child. I echoed his sentiment, saying,
"Of course."
But just a few days later, after concubine Jen came to my palace and drank a cup of tea, I collapsed onto the floor, bleeding profusely. When Xuan Yi arrived, that pool of blood was right before his eyes. He probably recalled the day Yun Yin miscarried, when he had also carried Yun Yin back from a pool of blood, only to lose a fully formed imperial prince. As he held me in his arms, his body was trembling.
Don't sleep. I am here. The imperial physician has arrived. Just hold on a little longer. I will stay with you the entire time.
I did my best to mimic Yunyan's expression when she was injured, touching his face, without saying a single word, without uttering a single cry of pain. As the memories overlapped, they likely became even more deeply engraved. When he learned that I had been given a large dose of safflower, which completely ruined my body and left me unable to ever bear children again, Xuan Yi was furious. He immediately turned to interrogate concubine Jen. Even though concubine concubine Jen kept her mouth shut and wouldn't say a word. Prying a few words of truth from the servants was not difficult.
Lately, Her Majesty the Empress has been calling our mistress to Weiyang Palace quite frequently. Today, she was even summoned early in the morning for a secret chat that lasted 2 hours. Before our mistress came to Guanjie Palace, the Empress sent someone out of the palace. She said, "Go with peace of mind. I will take care of everything. We beg your majesty to seek justice for our mistress."
Concubine Jen was very obedient. She followed my instructions, word for word.
Are you her dog? How have I never seen you this loyal before? Since you are so loyal, why did you betray a yin back then? A beast like you deserves to die.
As concubine Jen was dragged away, she kept begging me for mercy. I knew what she was saying. She was saying she did as I ordered and wanted me to spare her mother and brother. But I no longer have a brother, so how does she deserve to have one? After concubine Jen was banished to the cold palace, I sent her a grand gift. She loved playing stringed instruments, so I used her mother's tendons to make a pipa. She loved playing the drums, so I used her brother's skin to make a small drum. She went mad, screaming and shouting, bitterly cursing me for 6 hours. Halfway through her cursing, shrouded in a black cloak, I actually stood before her.
You were forced to drink safflower decoction and lost so much blood. Yet, you could still make your way to me. You are so cruel, so incredibly cruel.
I have never been a kind person, and today was not the first time she realized this. Pulling her into my embrace, I pulled the hairpin from her head. Stab by stab, I slowly ground away her ability to move. Then, dragging her dozens of feet, I threw her down a dry well. Before I left, I told her a truth that would make her die with everlasting regret.
I am not Yunyan's sister. Yunyan never had a sister. So, guess why my appearance and my way of using a blade resemble hers so much?
She must have realized something, desperately wanting to confirm it. But in such a desolate, abandoned well, no one would hear her, even if she screamed herself hoarse. When I was being skinned alive inch by inch, my younger brother must have felt that exact same despair. He tasted that kind of pain, so these murderers should taste it too. Back then, Lijar's mother was sold to a brothel and almost died in a pool of blood on a client's bed. It was I who charged in and saved her. Back then, her brother had neither literary talent nor martial skill and was born a slave. It was also I who used the favor of taking a sword for Xuanyi to secure a job for him. But in the end, that mother and son used the false news of my death to lure my brother into the capital. They betrayed me, so they must return everything they owe me. Previously, the three of them joined forces, exhausting every open and hidden scheme just to take Yunyan's life. But now, one is dead in the cold palace, and the other two, having been driven apart, are fighting to the death. And I no longer have any weakness for anyone to exploit. This time, will I lose again? When I returned to the palace exhausted, Xuanyi was sitting by the bed, reading a book. I still had blood on me, but he turned a blind eye to it. He was so filled with lingering fear that he just held my ice-cold hand.
Your body cannot handle the cold. Come here quickly. Let me warm you up.
He pulled me into his arms, holding me very tightly, trying to make up for the other me through my body. But no matter which me it was, neither could find any joy. The companionship Yunyan wanted back then. He stayed in Zhu Ying's courtyard and refused to give. Now, I want a river of blood to flow. He also downplays, unwilling to grant it.
I went to kill someone.
Then she deserved to die.
Aren't you going to ask who it was?
It is not important.
It is not that the person isn't important. It is just that the dead are not important. I almost lost my mind amidst his deep affection and protection, just a little bit close, because the Empress, the instigator, was forgiven by him. He stripped the Empress of her power to manage the imperial harem and confined her to Weiyang Palace to recuperate. And that was supposed to count as getting justice for me.
When your body is a bit better, we will title you noble consort. Do not make a fuss anymore, all right?
Make a fuss.
After Li Jenner's body was discovered, I took the hairpin she wore when she died as a gift to visit the Empress and sent it to Weiyang Palace. I heard there was still blood on the hairpin. The Empress vomited for a whole day and went to complain to Xuanyi, so he came to coax me. With a snip, I cut off a branch extending from the winter sweet.
What if I insist that she pay with her life for my child?
Meng Loaxi.
He was reminding me, I am Meng Loaxi, a useless person in the Marquis's manor, with no future in sight. Everything I have now was given to me by him. I should be obedient and submissive. Though it was the warm spring of March, I felt a bit cold.
Did Yunyan also die by her hand? Is this how you protected her back then too?
My blunt question left Xuanyi choked up and speechless.
I have important matters to attend to today. I will come to see you again tomorrow.
Whenever Yunyan was mentioned, he would try to avoid it.
They say it was the Empress who forced her to her death.
Xuanyi's back stiffened. A fierce and harsh gaze fell upon my face.
Was losing one Yunyan not enough? Do you want to lose me as well? Or is it that you never loved her And your heart has never truly beaten for me either.
Insolent.
It was the first time he had ever been so enraged, going so far as to slap me across the face.
I have truly spoiled you too much, indulging you until you no longer know your place. Who do you think you are? Nothing but a substitute we keep. Starting today, you shall stay in your palace and recover well. You are not permitted to go anywhere.
He loved my free and arrogant nature, yet he hated that I was not obedient enough, just like Yun Yin back then. He loved how Yun Yin would sacrifice everything for him, yet he felt she was too fierce and aggressive, so he preferred Ju Ying's elegance, consort Chen's charm, and concubine Jen's docility. In truth, he had only ever loved himself. I put down the scissors and stared at Xuan Yi's resolute, departing figure. I handed you the knife time and time again, granting you the chance to make amends. It was you who threw it away. In the future, you cannot blame me anymore. I was left neglected in Guanju Palace. For many days, I did not see Xuan Yi at all. Everyone said Consort Ru was too overbearing and had displeased the emperor, and now she had fallen from favor. With the empress falling ill, no one was happier than Consort Chen. She was granted the authority to assist in managing the imperial harem. Her son held evidence of the third prince's corruption and bribery, riding high with pride in the imperial court. The third prince was repeatedly impeached by the ministers, leaving Xuan Yi utterly disappointed. Finally, he stripped the third prince of his actual power and ordered him to recuperate at home. Upon hearing the news, Zhu Ying coughed up blood and weakly requested an audience with Xuan Yi. That day, I flew a kite in the courtyard. The soaring eagle looked incredibly lifelike, dancing in the sky above the palace as if it were alive. Xuan Yi stood outside Weiyang Palace, watching it for a long time. When he went inside, he had a massive argument with the empress. That eagle was once shot down by my younger brother and given to Xuan Yi as a birthday gift. He remembered my brother, and he also remembered what my brother had said.
My sister has nothing. She only has you and me. She would risk her life for us, so we must also protect her with our lives.
My brother did it, but he did not. That was the hidden ache in his heart, and the empress happened to rub salt into his wound. Naturally, she could no longer save her precious son. Seeing my fall from favor, the Marquis's Manor, which had been marginalized by the great families, began to take advantage of my misfortune. The Marquis sent someone with a letter for me, giving orders in a patronizing tone.
Acknowledge your ancestors and return to the clan as soon as possible. As your father, I will send a girl from a branch of the Meng family into the palace to help secure favor for you. The child she bears will be raised by your side, so you will have something to rely on, only by holding fast to the emperor's favor. Can there be a better future for the Meng family?
A dying insect still dares to struggle.
Since he delivered himself right to my doorstep, I naturally spared no effort to give him a helping hand. And so, that letter ended up on Xuan Yi's desk. What emperor would want his harem and offspring to be controlled by his ministers? Especially when his favorite consort fell from grace for just one day and was immediately reduced to a state where anyone could bully her. Overnight, the Meng family was implicated in a treason case in the imperial court. Their home was raided, and they were exiled. It happened in the blink of an eye. See, if the emperor wants to stand up for you, it takes nothing more than a wave of his hand. It is just that he was simply unwilling before. Xuan Yi remembered how pitiful and helpless I was when left all alone. After giving me the cold shoulder for a month, he came to see me again.
Now that you've learned your lesson, you must learn to be more obedient.
My whip had been confiscated, so I could only pick at my fingernails.
Didn't you say you liked the wildness and untamed nature in me?
Seeing that I still had the spirit to bicker with him, his anger dissipated.
The palace is not a place for fighting and killing. There are many ways to protect yourself. I will give them to you, but you must be good.
I pouted my lips.
Unless you compensate me with a child.
How is that difficult? It just so happened there was a ready-made one by the Empress Dowager's side.
A sickly prince, as frail and thin as a kitten, was brought before me. He shrank back timidly, hiding behind others, without a single trace of a prince's dignity. The wet nurse repeatedly begged for forgiveness.
Please forgive him, Your Highness. The fourth prince is in poor health, so he is a bit timid.
This child's birth had cost his mother her life, and he had been raised by the Empress Dowager's side. But since the Empress Dowager was rarely in the palace, he had fallen into the hands of Zhu Ying. He spent 8 out of 10 months recovering from illness.
But in the end, he was still alive, and in the end, he had fallen into my hands.
I stood up with a smile.
Come over here. Let me take a good look at what my son looks like.
to bear a child for Xuanyi. Meng Luoxi's body was not fit, and I was not so foolish as to hand my own weakness over to him.
Besides, I could not wait any longer. A ready-made one would do just fine.
Without the backing of an influential family, I had only Xuanyi to rely on. He was not on his guard against me. My newly adopted son naturally had the best teachers available and the finest residence to live in. Even Xuanyi, while spending time with me, would often play chess with the well-behaved Shen Yuran and occasionally plant flowers for me together with him, seeing me rise higher and higher, and my son gradually showing his talents. Consort Chen could no longer sit still. The second prince drew closer and closer to the ministers, even showing signs of suppressing the third prince. He even instigated the officials to pressure Xuanyi into naming an heir. The emperor was in his prime, being pressured by his son to name a crown prince. Early was already a major taboo. Yet, the second prince chose to impeach my son over a trivial matter. Consort Chen had painstakingly planned everything for her son, only for it to come to an abrupt halt just one step away from success. The second prince formed cliques for personal gain, suppressed his siblings, and harbored malicious intentions. He was ordered to depart for his fiefdom on the border immediately, and was forbidden from entering the capital without a summons. All of this, from the moment I instigated Consort Chen to let the second prince show off, was a predetermined outcome. When the tree falls, the monkeys scatter. Those opportunistic ministers, sensing the shift, came to curry favor with me. I ignored every single one of them. Only when having tea with the ministers' wives did I casually bring up the former Marquis of Yangyi's household. I remarked that perhaps his daughter was destined for a short life of blessings, severing all ties of kinship with them. Combining this with my actions at the Marquis's manor before returning to the palace, someone quickly figured out my intentions. The young master of the Meng family could not bear the hardships of exile and actually jumped into a river, drowning to feed the fish. Lord Meng, having to bury his own child, unable to bear the blow, he took a fall and was left paralyzed in bed, unable to move. Madame Meng now works day and night like an old servant, yet she cannot even earn enough food to fill her stomach. Left all alone, they see no end to their sea of misery. Only then did they remember they still had a daughter. Filled with regret, she tried to ask around about me from others, but others sneered and replied to her,
"She is His Majesty's favored consort. Is she someone you have the right to ask about? You had better give up on your thoughts of social climbing."
I was drying meat jerky again, the best and most fragrant meat jerky. My son asked me,
"Does mother still feel pain?"
I touched my chest.
It doesn't hurt anymore.
Meng Luoxi no longer feels pain. The one who hurts is Yun Yin. But unexpectedly, someone used my coldness and lack of filial piety to make an issue. Just as I was about to be conferred the title of noble consort, I was impeached by the censors for lacking the virtue to match the position. Xuanyi was absolutely furious.
Whether I am a noble consort or not, I do not care. Having you and Ranner by my side is enough.
Is it really enough?
Consort Chen arrived with a smile, preceded by the empress who had not shown her face for a long time. These two women, whose sons had both been ruined, had joined forces once again.
Is Consort Ru truly the daughter of the Meng family?
Of course not,
I replied directly. Their faces darkened.
I am an orphan girl. Did you not know that?
But all of this proves that you are not an orphan, but the descendant of a criminal official.
A member of the Yun family. The descendant of the Yun family's criminal official. Are you?
Back then, the side consort was discovered to be the descendant of a criminal official, which was why she could not escape and jumped into Weiyang Lake. Who would have thought that she still had such a beautiful younger sister?
What a pity indeed.
Though she said it was a pity, the smugness on her face could not be concealed. They probably thought that by joining forces once again, they would surely doom me to a miserable death.
Where did this evidence of guilt come from?
It was delivered to my hands by a maid from concubine Jen's palace before her death. These are all solid proofs that you, sister, instigated her to use the Empress's hand to bring about her own child's death. Sister, do you have anything else to say?
Xuanyi's expression was terrifyingly dark. I knew he was suppressing his rage, waiting for my explanation. Therefore, I spread open the letter and showed it to Xuanyi, word by word.
Whose handwriting does your majesty think this is?
Xuanyi's eyes narrowed. He reached out and slapped Consort Chen hard across the face.
Has your majesty struck the wrong person? The one who has committed countless evils is clearly Consort Ru.
Xuanyi looked down at her, his eyes filled with utter disappointment.
The Empress is in poor health. Return to your palace early to rest and recover. I will pretend you never came today.
They were husband and wife after all. He actually still protected her, even at a time like this. But having finally gained an opportunity to take revenge on me, how could Zhu Ying bear to let it go? She actually led the crowd of imperial concubines to kneel straight down in front of Xuanyi.
I am the mistress of the inner palace, and I bear the responsibility responsibility to advise your majesty. To have a rebel and traitor constantly by the sovereign's side is a threat to the state of Great Chu. For the sake of the state and for the sake of your majesty, I beg your majesty to execute the survivor of the Yun family. Yun died in disgrace back then. I fear the Yun family harbors deep resentment in their hearts. Remaining by your majesty's side with harboring evil intentions is a threat to the state and the dynasty.
What they had done to Union together back then, Xuan Yi had never witnessed, but today, their aggressive pressuring of me, Meng Luoxi, was something he saw with absolute clarity.
If your majesty does not believe it, I have also brought the confessions of the Meng family members. That Meng Luoxi was originally timid and shrinking, not even daring to speak much in front of others. How could she be as swift, decisive, and unscrupulous as consort Ru? The daughter of the Yun family has merely taken Meng Luoxi's skin. To bewitch your majesty, we beg your majesty to think twice.
The consorts of the 6 palaces kowtowed in unison on the ground, forcing me to my death. I lightly brushed my sleeves, unable to help but look at Xuan Yi and laugh out loud.
What should we do? Are you going to die? Or am I?
Consort Ru, presumptuous, your majesty. Even now, do you still intend to indulge and protect her?
Xuan Yi let out a cold laugh, flicking his robe. He sat down on a stool.
Then, what does the Empress think we should do?
Rebellious subjects and traitors should naturally be executed.
Xuan Yi nodded in serious contemplation and then waved his hand.
Guards, drag her away.
The Empress and Consort Chen exchanged a glance, both filled with the smugness and triumph of certain victory. But, in the next instant, the men brought by Eunuch Wu dragged Consort Chen away instead.
Presumptuous, the one you should be seizing is consort. Ru, why are you seizing me?
The Empress was also completely bewildered.
Your majesty, what is the meaning of this?
Xuan Yi looked down at them, as if looking at clowns.
Consort Chen just said that the handwriting in those letters is identical to Consort Ru's. But Consort Ru was lost by the Marquis's estate for many years, and has never studied at all. How could she know how to write?
Everyone was shocked.
But Consort Ru's calligraphy and copybooks have been circulated outside. How can it be said she does not know how to write? Could your majesty have been deceived by her?
For the first time, Xuan Yi showed an expression of disgust toward Zhu Ying.
Because that is our own handwriting.
They felt as if struck by lightning, frozen in place on the spot. Only then did I smile and explain.
His Majesty dotes on me, knowing that writing is difficult for me, and that he could neither teach me nor guide me, yet fearing I would be mocked for having no ink in my chest. He would often use his left hand to write some random sentimental poems, for me to use to keep up appearances. Consort Chen frequently visited Guanju Palace, so taking 2 copybooks was naturally no difficult task, only she did not know that the handwriting was not mine. Thus, those letters naturally did not come from my hand either. A month ago, when Xuan Yi was practicing his calligraphy again,
2 copybooks went missing. On that day, only Consort Chen had come to have a cup of tea with me. Only Consort Chen had come to have a cup of tea with me. At the time, I said with a smile,
"Since she likes your majesty, she must also like your majesty's handwriting." At that time, Xuan Yi had even teased me for being jealous.
Consort Chen was terrified to the extreme. No matter how she cried out her innocence, she could not change the outcome of being executed. The Empress collapsed onto the ground, also knowing that her time was up. Xuan Yi took my hand. Without casting so much as a single glance at the Empress behind him, he pulled me into his arms, his body trembling slightly.
We should never have been soft-hearted toward her. I should never have been soft-hearted with her.
I knew what he was thinking of. That day, everyone was tight-lipped about Yunyin's death, leaving only the word that she had jumped into Weiyang Lake and drowned. Yunyin was terrified of water. If they hadn't backed her into a corner, she would never have jumped into the lake. But he didn't know that what was more terrifying than drowning was the 7th level of the dungeon. I endured it layer by layer, only dying when I reached the 5th layer. From beginning to end, my little brother was forced to witness my tragic death. The profound pain was dredged up once again. I placed my trembling hand on his back.
"You protected me today. That is more than enough."
He held me even tighter, his heart filled with guilt. But deep down, I knew very well that from beginning to end, I was the only one protecting myself. The letters in Consort Zhen's hands were real. They were evidence I had deliberately left behind, written in imitation of Xuan Yi's handwriting. Meng Luoxi indeed did not know how to do it, but Yunyin certainly did. After Consort Chen met her end, the 2nd prince was immediately banished to his fiefdom, stripped of everything, never to pose a threat again. The 3rd prince lost the backing of the Zhu family, and the gravely ill empress could offer him no help. He could only keep a low profile to survive. As the noble consort, I became the truly triumphant one in the imperial harem. It seemed as though I had won, but not quite yet. When I took the 4th prince to see the Empress Dowager, she sighed, turning her Buddhist beads.
I have done everything I promised you. When will you fulfill what you promised me?
That I could make it to where I am today, with every step going smoothly, was largely thanks to the Empress Dowager's quiet support behind the scenes. Even Meng Luoxi's shattered soul was gathered back for me because she pleaded with the abbot of Huguo Temple to help me gather them back together. I am not an ungrateful person. I presented a letter to the Empress Dowager.
One last time, I must trouble your Imperial Highness.
On the way back to my palace, the fourth prince asked me,
If Imperial Mother wanted a son, there are plenty in the palace. Why did you choose me, the most useless one?
The blazing sun made my eyes sting. Choking back tears, I said,
Because you and I share a special bond.
But he did not know that my corpse, struck by the soul-suppressing pearl, which should have sunk to the bottom of Weiyang Lake, was secretly swapped out by his mother, the concubine whom the Empress Dowager had forced into the prince's estate and who had always been at odds with me, secretly swapped me out. She buried me outside the capital, planting a peach tree nearby as a marker.
If the prince risks everything to seek justice and avenge you, I will bring him here to find you. The peach tree shall be our witness.
But Xuan Yi, for the sake of power, for the newly secured title of crown prince, and to avoid any gossip about his household, suppressed the truth of my death and the grievances of the Yun family. No one came looking for me. I had known long ago that he had abandoned me.
Noble consort, come here. I have painted a portrait of you. Take a look.
Xuan Yi's eyes were filled with affection. As he reached his hand out to me from afar, I took it with a smile. The woman in the painting had a face like a peach blossom. Her faint smile carried a hint of defiance and coldness. It was me, yet it was not me.
I only have you left. You must stay by my side until our hair turns white.
The sunset glow reflected red in his eyes. He seemed so sincere. So, I replied with equal sincerity.
Very well.
Yet, barely half a month later, the Grand Astrologer declared that I was an evil spirit. When accused of possessing Meng Luoxi's body, he hid behind the Grand Astrologer without a moment's hesitation.
Whether it is true or not, letting the Grand Astrologer perform the ritual will put my mind at ease, and yours as well.
The chronically ill Empress stood beside Xuan Yi, staring at me gloomily. She gestured to me with a silent mouth movement that only the two of us could understand.
Once again, you are going to die by my hand.
This so-called Grand Astrologer had placed the soul-suppressing pearl on my corpse 15 years ago, and 15 years later, he was invited back to destroy my soul. But Zhu Ying, one does not fall into the same trap twice. I nodded to Xuan Yi with a faint smile.
Indeed, this way, we can both be at peace.
The Grand Master placed his talisman on me, and the true Samadhi fire swept across my face. It hurt, a searing, burning pain. Yet, I kept smiling as I looked at Xuan Yi. Guilt-ridden, he could not even bring himself to look me in the eye. Looking back on this life, my greatest mistake was seeking warmth from Xuan Yi, who was just as helpless as I was when I was at my lowest. I risked my life fighting for him, yet he lacked the courage to even speak up for me. My poor younger brother, his corpse was thrown into the river, suffering such an undeserved fate. Once the tedious ritual was complete, the Empress turned pale with shock once more.
How can this be?
I collapsed onto the ground, exhausted from the day's ordeal, and stared up at her coldly.
How else should it be? Did your Majesty expect me to perish on the spot?
The moment those words left my mouth, a pale Xuan Yi violently spat out a mouthful of blood and collapsed instantly. Meanwhile, in my bosom, the white jade containing Meng Luoxi's remnant soul happened to tremble slightly. How wonderful. Using the Emperor's dragon aura, I have reshaped Meng Luoxi's physical form.
Audacious heretic. How dare you attempt to assassinate the Emperor? Guards, seize him.
The Empress Dowager rushed in, followed by the true Grand Master. The Empress had used a heretic to take the Emperor's life, and the Empress Dowager immediately banished her to the cold palace. This was my scheme all along, killing two birds with one stone, using their own strength against them, allowing both the Empress Dowager and me to get what we wanted. After spitting blood, Xuan Yi lay in bed, unable to speak. Knowing he was on his deathbed, I decided to tell him a story.
The heretic who drained your dragon aura was the same one who over a decade ago placed a soul-binding bead into Yunyan's corpse. Yunyan died. Yet she did not die completely. She became a wandering ghost, waiting desperately for her husband to come for her. But later, the one who came for her was a young girl named Meng Luoxi.
Xuan Yi's eyes widened in shock.
Guess why? He dared to risk his life to help me take yours. Because if I sacrificed myself with my blood, she would suffer a backlash and perish. In this world, one only truly feels the pain when the blow lands on oneself.
I do not care for anyone's regret. I want them to feel the pain, raw and real, on their own bodies, including Xuan Yi. Xuan Yi stared at me intently, his expression incredibly complex.
To die at the hands of your official wife, the noble lady you respected most. How does that taste? It must be agonizing, isn't it? Do you know how much it hurt when I learned of your repeated betrayals? Do you know how much it hurt each time I was abandoned by you? Just how much did it hurt?
Xuan Yi's eyes were bloodshot as he stared at me without blinking.
Are you looking at Meng Luoxi or Yunyin? It doesn't matter. They are both me. It is just that you deserve neither. The Empress Dowager will take good care of you. After all, she raised you for so many years. Since you personally killed her biological son, she hates you more than anyone. As for the empire you love so dearly, leave it to my son. After all, I helped you conquer half of this empire. You ruled over one half, so the other half shall be ruled by me.
After I stood up and left, I never went back to see him again. But as for Zhu Ying in the cold palace, she was the one I visited the most. Every time I went, I brought a gift. First, it was her father, who had plotted all her schemes. Then her brother, who had always backed her up. And finally, her mother, who had sent her the poison and caused the death of my son. For every single one of them, I did exactly what her brother had once done to me. I subjected them to all 72 tortures, one by one, letting them die only when they drew their very last breath. At first, Zhu Ying felt only hatred. She screamed and wailed, desperately wishing she could fight me to the death. Then she felt terror and fear, and in the end, she begged and pleaded, admitting defeat. Eventually, she was driven mad. She tried to grab a blade to end her own life, but the guards stopped her.
Take good care of her every single day. If anyone lets her die, I will execute their entire family.
The corpses of her family hung in the cold palace, keeping her company day after day. Zhu Ying could not die, yet she could not truly live either. Just like when I was hung from the peach blossom tree, she had to suffer through it, day by day. With my great vengeance finally exacted, my son became the new emperor. He treated me with the utmost respect, following my subtle hints. He cleared the Yun family's name, with no more worries weighing on my mind. I, the youngest Empress Dowager, had nothing but endless blessings ahead of me. I hosted palace banquet after palace banquet. People said I couldn't bear the loneliness, and loved nothing more than lavish feasts. I ignored them, and continued to do as I pleased, until one day, at a palace banquet, I saw the heavily pregnant wife of the heir of Marquis Rongen. I couldn't help but smile with joy. The Marquis of Rongen held a hereditary title, and his family was known for their upright character. The men were not allowed to take concubines, and the heir and his wife were childhood sweethearts deeply in love. Though the child was only 5 months along, they had already prepared everything he would need for his entire life. Such a family was truly wonderful. Young lady of the Rongen household, come here. You bring such a joyful presence. I wish to bestow a gift upon you. The young lady glanced at the heir, and with a reassuring look from him, she slowly walked over to me. I took out the white jade I had kept for so long.
To protect your pregnancy, keep this with you every day.
She accepted it with a smile, and offered her thanks. Watching her walk away, I remembered the peach blossom tree, and the girl who used to share dried meat with me.
A good family for your next life. I have found it for you. You must, absolutely must, be happy.